Imagine walking into a room where every door is locked, except one. You don't know which door it is. Around you are people frantically trying every handle, kicking against the panels, shouting for someone to let them out. Their panic is contagious. You feel the urgency to rush, to struggle, to prove you're doing something. But then, a strange thought enters your mind. What if the right door will open only when you approach it calmly, without fear, without hurry? This is the paradox of life. The more desperately we chase certainty, the more it slips from our grasp. And yet, those who carry themselves as if the outcome is already decided in their favor seem to glide through obstacles with an ease that almost feels unfair. They act, speak, and move as though the universe itself conspires for them. Why? Because they act as if everything always works out. But let us pause here. Doesn't such a stance sound naive, even reckless? After all, isn't the world filled with chaos, failure, injustice, and tragedy? Doesn't suffering visit every home sooner or later? Yes. And yet, history is littered with men and women who walked through fire believing, sometimes irrationally, that the flames could not consume them, and remarkably, many emerged unscathed, transformed, or victorious. The unsettling question then arises, what if your belief that things won't work out is precisely the reason they don't? What if reality is more malleable than you dare admit? What if your inner stance, your expectation, serves as the architect of your outer circumstances? Consider this. When you step into a difficult meeting, a critical interview, or a risky conversation already rehearsing disaster in your mind, your body betrays you. Your voice falters, your posture closes, your words stumble. You prove yourself right, your prediction becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But reverse it. Walk into the same situation as though you were chosen, as though the tide is secretly pulling you toward triumph, and suddenly, subtle forces shift. Confidence replaces hesitation. Openness replaces fear. You transmit something undeniable, and the world responds. To act as if everything always works out is not to deny pain, nor to pretend the world is flawless. It is to live in radical trust that, even through failure, heartbreak, and confusion, there is an unseen coherence guiding events toward eventual good. It is to bet your life on a deeper order that remains invisible to most eyes. Skeptics might call this delusion, but pause again. Is it any less delusional to believe the opposite, that life is fundamentally against you, that failure is inevitable, that despair is the most realistic position? If you must choose an illusion, why not choose the one that expands rather than shrinks you? Philosopher William James once wrote, "Believe that life is worth living, and your belief will help create the fact." This is not fluffy optimism. It is a recognition of the intimate dance between expectation and reality. Belief does not simply reflect the world. It shapes it. So here is the tension we begin with. The world is uncertain, yet those who act as though it is secretly arranged in their favor often find themselves carried by currents others cannot see. What appears like luck or privilege may instead be the profound consequence of stance. And this is where the first door opens. If you dare to act as though everything works out for you, not occasionally, not by chance, but always, then you begin living from a place most people never touch. It is not arrogance, nor is it blind faith. It is an orientation toward life itself, a chosen agreement with possibility. The next step is to understand how this orientation is built, how one trains the mind and heart to inhabit this stance without collapsing into denial or fantasy. That is where we now turn. Picture a storm at sea. Waves rise higher than walls, winds howl like a furious god, and the ship creaks as though it might split in two. Most on board are consumed by terror. Every flash of lightning seems like a death sentence. Yet in the captain's eyes, there is no panic. He knows storms end, that tides shift, that beneath the surface the ocean has a rhythm older than any tempest. He does not deny the storm's fury. He acknowledges it fully. But he also sees what others cannot. Beyond the chaos lies continuity. This is the essence of acting as if everything always works out. It is not blindness to difficulty, but the cultivation of vision that extends further than immediate appearances. To train this vision requires discipline. Our minds are conditioned to fixate on threats, to anticipate the worst, to assume the storm will never end. Evolution wired us this way for survival, but it also traps us in unnecessary suffering. The practice, then, is to rewire perception itself, to learn to see patterns of resolution where others see only randomness. One way to begin is through the deliberate re-narration of events. Think of a time in your past when you thought life was falling apart. The breakup that shattered you, the job loss that humiliated you, the betrayal that cut deep. In the moment, it felt like ruin. But in hindsight, perhaps it redirected you, forced you to grow, or opened space for something better. If you reframe those moments as essential turning points, then the story changes. What looked like collapse was actually construction. Training the mind means collecting these hidden gifts and keeping them close. They become evidence that apparent chaos often disguises hidden order. When you remember this, you begin walking into present storms with a strange calm, because you already know the future will reveal coherence you cannot yet perceive. There is also the practice of attention. Whatever you focus on magnifies in your experience. If you fixate on obstacles, you strengthen them. If you search for openings, opportunities, and quiet blessings, you amplify those. Acting as if everything works out is therefore not passive. It is active vigilance over the direction of your gaze. It is asking yourself daily, am I feeding fear, or am I nurturing possibility? Of course, this is not easy. The mind rebels. It argues. But what if things don't work out this time? What if this loss really is final? What if this wound never heals? This inner voice speaks with the authority of logic, but often, it is only the echo of past disappointments masquerading as truth. To confront it, one must cultivate faith, not necessarily religious faith, but faith in the unseen structure of life. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." The event is not the enemy. It is our interpretation that destabilizes us. When you shift the view, when you take the stance that events ultimately conspire for your growth, you strip chaos of its sting. And this brings us to an extraordinary discovery. The stance itself becomes creative. When you live as though life is organized in your favor, your actions change subtly. You take risks you would otherwise avoid. You stay open to people you might otherwise dismiss. You pursue goals with steadiness instead of desperation. Slowly, your external reality begins reflecting the inner conviction. What began as a mental practice becomes a lived reality. Thus, to train the mind is not merely to trick yourself into comfort. It is to step into partnership with life. You no longer see yourself as a victim of circumstance, but as a co-creator in a larger unfolding. This shift of identity is radical. It changes how you breathe, speak, and carry yourself. Now the question arises, if the mind can be trained to inhabit this stance, how does the body and spirit follow? For to live fully as though everything works out, the alignment must run deeper than thought. It must reach the marrow of being. Think of someone who enters a room, and before they speak a single word, everyone notices. It isn't arrogance or showmanship. It is presence. A quiet confidence radiates from their posture, their pace, their gaze. Without trying, they shift the energy of the space. Why? Because their body and spirit have aligned with a conviction. Things work out for me. This alignment cannot be faked for long. It must be lived. We often underestimate how much our bodies broadcast our inner stance. A slouched posture, darting eyes, restless fidgeting. These reveal an internal story of fear and doubt. Conversely, an open chest, steady breathing, grounded steps. These declare faith without words. The body does not lie, and when it embodies the belief that outcomes are ultimately favorable, it whispers assurance not only to others but to your own nervous system. But embodiment is more than posture. It is the daily rehearsal of trust through action. For example, someone who embodies this stance does not shrink from opportunities, even when intimidated. They take the call, they send the proposal, they ask the question, because at a visceral level, they are convinced life bends toward support. The action itself becomes a ritual of alignment, proof that belief is not confined to the mind but anchored in behavior. Spirit, too, plays its part. Beyond rational calculation, There is a dimension of living where intuition speaks. Those quiet nudges, synchronicities, gut feelings that defy logic but often prove reliable. To embody the stance of everything works out is to honor these signals, to walk with an openness that life is speaking in ways subtler than words. Those who cultivate spiritual alignment notice doors that appear at the right time, helpers who arrive unexpectedly, paths that reveal themselves only once you've taken the first step. This does not mean denying setbacks. To embody the stance is not to plaster a smile over wounds, nor to chant empty affirmations while ignoring grief. Instead, it is to allow pain but refuse despair. It is to let sorrow move through you without concluding that sorrow defines you. Even the body learns resilience here, breathing through the ache, standing even when bent, whispering inwardly, "This too will shape me toward wholeness." Such embodiment transforms your relationship with failure. Where most see failure as proof of inadequacy, those living this stance see it as choreography, an intricate step in a larger dance. They fail, but they fail forward, carrying the quiet conviction that even detours are part of destiny's map. In this way, the body does not collapse under defeat. It steadies itself, knowing the story is still unfolding. To live as though things always work out is also to cultivate ritual. Simple practices anchor belief into flesh and spirit, pausing each morning to set an intention of trust, writing down moments of unexpected good that arrived after hardship, practicing breath work when anxiety swells, reminding the body that safety is not always external but can be summoned from within. Over time, these rituals carve new grooves into your nervous system, teaching you to rest in trust rather than contract in fear. Consider again the paradox. Those who act as though outcomes are against them often embody tension, suspicion, and retreat. The world reflects back the very energy they project. But those who embody faith radiate openness, patience, and calm. They magnetize opportunities, not by manipulation, but by resonance. Life meets them where they stand. As the poet Rainer Maria Rilke once urged, "Live your questions now, and perhaps even without knowing it, you will live along some distant day into your answers." Embodiment is precisely this, living into the unseen answer before it arrives, carrying yourself as though resolution is already underway. And so, belief moves from mind to body, from thought to posture, from idea to daily ritual. But embodiment alone is incomplete without resilience, the ability to endure setbacks without surrendering the stance. How, then, does one hold to this way of living when the night grows long and the promised dawn refuses to break? Imagine a candle in a cavern. The air is damp, shadows stretch endlessly, and the darkness seems to smother everything in its path. Yet the flame persists. It trembles, it bends, it shrinks under drafts, but it does not vanish. This is resilience, the art of holding a stance even when the world appears to contradict it. To act as if everything always works out is easy when victories flow and doors swing open. The real test comes in silence and loss. What happens when prayers remain unanswered? When love leaves? When health falters? When the horizon shows no sign of light? Here the temptation is strongest to abandon the stance, to say, "I was foolish to believe." And yet, it is precisely in these moments that resilience proves whether the belief was surface optimism or a deeply rooted orientation of the soul. Resilience is not about denying pain. It is about integrating pain without letting it dictate the story's ending. One who embodies resilience can weep, rage, or collapse temporarily, but beneath it all remains a subterranean trust. This too belongs, and this too will work toward my good. The storm rages, but the flame holds. How does one cultivate such resilience? The first element is memory. Recall the past storms that seemed unending but eventually broke. Remember the nights that felt unbearable until dawn arrived. By anchoring yourself in remembered survival, you create evidence against despair. Each scar becomes testimony that you are carried even through fire. The second element is perspective. To live as though things always work out does not mean demanding immediate clarity. It means accepting that clarity often comes later. When trapped in the middle of a narrative, the plot will not make sense. Resilience is the patience to let life reveal coherence in its own time. Third, Resilience requires community. Alone, the flame can falter. Among others, flames gather strength. To surround yourself with people who share the stance, or at least honor it, is to create an atmosphere where faith is normalized. In despair, the voices of others remind you of the larger order when you cannot remember for yourself. But resilience also demands a fierce internal decision. There will be moments when every external sign tells you the stance is absurd. And here lies the hidden paradox. The very absurdity of trust is what makes it powerful. To say, "I choose to believe," when the evidence screams otherwise, is to align with possibility beyond your own logic. It is a declaration to life itself. I will not collapse into cynicism, no matter how convincing you try to be. This is not fantasy. It is radical courage. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once observed, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." When your why is that life is secretly ordered toward your good, then know how no hardship can break you entirely. You bend, but you do not break. Resilience also transforms failure into fuel. To someone rooted in despair, failure confirms the world is against them. But to someone practicing this stance, failure is simply information. It refines the path, sharpens the will, teaches humility, and prepares the soil for growth. In this way, resilience is not passive endurance but active transformation. What emerges is a paradoxical strength, soft yet unshakable, flexible yet unyielding. You learn to sit with grief without drowning, to walk through setbacks without bitterness, to breathe even when hope feels thin. Over time, this resilience forges a character that radiates quiet assurance. Others sense it, a flame that refuses extinction. And so resilience becomes the bridge between belief and destiny. Keeps you aligned when circumstances try to tear you apart. It whispers in the dark, "Hold on," because even here, the seeds of good are buried. The question then becomes, what is the fruit of such a life? If one trains the mind, embodies the stance, and sustains resilience, what transformation unfolds in the long run? This leads us to the final step, the ultimate liberation of living as though everything always works out. Picture yourself standing on the edge of a river. All your life, you've tried to control its current, building dams, swimming upstream, thrashing against the water whenever it carried you where you did not want to go. Exhaustion became your companion. But now something shifts. You let go. You allow the river to carry you. Not passively, not as a victim of fate, but with the trust that its bends, rapids, and still waters are taking you precisely where you need to arrive. This is liberation, the fruit of living as though everything always works out for you. Liberation is not about having a perfect life. It is about being unchained from fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of loss. These are the invisible shackles that keep most people trapped in smallness. But when you carry the unshakable stance that life conspires for your good, fear loosens its grip. You step forward freely because even if the outcome is different from what you expected, you trust it will be right. Such liberation allows for bolder choices. You dare to create, to speak, to love, to risk, not recklessly, but with a deep calm that says, whatever unfolds will serve me. This calm is magnetic. Others feel drawn to those who live this way, not because they are flawless, but because they radiate a rare kind of freedom. They remind us of what it means to be fully alive. Liberation also changes your relationship with time. No longer do you cling anxiously to immediate results. You release the obsession with speed, knowing that outcomes mature at their own rhythm. You plant seeds, tend them faithfully, and trust the harvest will come, even if it arrives in a season you cannot predict. This release into trust softens impatience and replaces restlessness with quiet anticipation. Another mark of liberation is generosity. When you live as though everything always works out for you, scarcity loses its hold. You no longer grip tightly to possessions, opportunities, or even people. You give freely, knowing that what leaves your hand will return in another form. This abundance mindset ripples outward, creating communities rooted not in competition but in shared flourishing. But perhaps the deepest liberation is identity itself. You cease defining yourself by wounds, labels, or external validation. Instead, you begin to identify as someone carried, someone guided, someone whose life participates in a larger harmony. This identity brings profound peace. Even in moments of uncertainty, you rest in the truth. I am not abandoned. I am part of something vast, and it favors my becoming. Liberation is not perfection. It is freedom to dance even while storms gather, to sing even while tears fall, to trust even while questions remain unanswered. This freedom is contagious. When others witness it, they too are invited to loosen their grip, to step into trust, to experiment with the possibility that life could be secretly on their side. In the end, the stance of acting as if everything always works out transforms into more than a stance. It becomes a way of being, one that permeates thought, body, resilience, and spirit until it is no longer an effort but a natural state. Life still surprises, still wounds, still tests, but beneath it all flows a current of trust that nothing can erase. As Lao Tzu once wrote, "When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be." This is the liberation of trust. By surrendering the need to control every outcome, you open the door to possibilities greater than your own imagination. And so, we return to the original paradox. Those who live in fear of things not working out often create the very failures they dread. Those who dare to act as though everything always works out, through discipline of mind, embodiment of spirit, resilience in darkness, and ultimate liberation, discover a life of flow, abundance, and quiet radiance. The invitation is simple, though not easy. Loosen your grip, align with trust, and let life prove that you were never adrift, but always carried.